In this video, we're gonna go over the exact routine I used to have the best year of my career, feel the best I ever did when I pitched, and consistently be in the mid-90s every time I went out there. By the way, I'm Dylan Sabia, former professional pitcher who routinely threw in the mid-90s, and now I help athletes all over the world do the same thing. The first link in the description books a call with me to see if you're the right fit for my system and how I'm actually gonna help you throw in the mid-90s. So first, we're going to go through my off-season routine, which was I was lifting like a bodybuilder, which was the thumbnail of this video, which is 100% the truth. I did push-pull legs 6 days a week, so I would hit each muscle group twice, and some days I would go back to the gym to hit cardio and abs. So I was lifting like a madman 6 days a week, pretty consistently for 3 months, where I lost about 20 pounds of fat and put on about 10 pounds of muscle during that time frame in those 3 months. I really never gave my body a break and was just trying to get as lean as I possibly could so I could feel the best every time that I pitched. During that time period in college, my philosophy was I wanted to feel my best every time I stepped on the mound, so I wanted to build this baseline of strengths. So no matter what I asked of myself on the mound, I was already training harder than that. So when it came to the pitching delivery and asking of that stress on my body, it was actually less than what I had been doing in the weight room. I later found out that that really wasn't exactly what was happening, and that really wasn't the truth. And I really don't recommend having this bodybuilder mentality, but I'll get into that later. I really just want to go through my routine at this point and really how I consistently threw 95 and stayed healthy throughout that entire year, and truthfully felt the best I ever had throughout my entire baseball career. And I really did feel 1000% confident and healthy every single time I was given the ball. So during the offseason, I didn't throw for those 2 weeks, and I was lifting, as I said, 6 days a week, nonstop, never really gave my body a break. But some of the things I did notice throughout that phase of lifting was, as I said, when I picked up a baseball, it really didn't feel like I was putting a lot of stress on my body because I'd been so used to this progressive overload lifting of trying to lift more than I did the day before. So every week I was trying to add more weight to the bar, or curl heavier dumbbells, or push down heavier tricep extensions. Every week I was trying to do better than I did the week before. And what this did was it gave me a tremendous baseline of strength, where, as I said, to me personally and how I viewed it and really how I felt out there, was I was pushing myself more than I ever possibly could on the mound. Pitching became very easy as far as a workload and the stress on the body standpoint. It didn't really feel like I was doing as much work as I was in the weight room of trying to squat 405 or 500 pounds or do 15 minutes of nonstop Stairmaster cardio. Pitching felt like kind of easy as far as from a workload standpoint. And then towards the end of the offseason was when I started to throw bullpens again and get back into throwing this high intensity velo. And one of the most surprising things was I was sitting 90 miles an hour in my bullpens, which I had personally never even seen myself hit 90 before. As I've said in some other videos, I went Division II out of high school, so there wasn't a lot of velo or radar really around my life at that point. So I really had no idea how hard I threw. I'd been told some numbers of like 87, 86. I really didn't know. But then once I got into this offseason, I went to a training facility and I started throwing some bullpens, and I was consistently 90, a couple 89s, but pretty consistently 90 miles per hour in bullpens. And I'm going to be honest with you, I really wasn't trying to throw hard. I was really trying to work on executing my spots and pitch design and figuring out how I was going to dominate at the Division I level, because my philosophy was throwing as hard as I could in these bullpens really had no use for me. I was really just trying to hit my spots and really just be free and easy. And I think that's the reason that this whole sort of formula worked for me, was I was putting out this tremendous amount of force production in the weight room, and then when it became time to throw, I was really loose, really flowy with my arm action, and I wasn't really trying to ever muscle the baseball, which is what I really was doing obviously in the weight room. I didn't really ever have those two worlds collide. I kept them pretty separate. So in those bullpens, I'd seen numbers that I had never seen before. Also at this time, I was actually super frustrated with only seeing 90 miles an hour because I was trying to throw 95. One of the things I didn't realize was the difference between a bullpen in a training facility and then in-game in front of 5,000 people. I didn't really understand the difference at that time. I was just like, wow, I'm throwing 90 in this bullpen. I'm gonna throw 90 in game. I'm not gonna get drafted. That's not what I want. So I didn't understand that yet, and we'll get into later sort of what happened throughout the year and where I was completely wrong, bullpen velocity being a 1-to-1 with in-game. So that was the offseason, and I really took that lifting routine into in-season, but I dropped it down to 4 days a week because during conference on the weekends, there was no gyms for me to go to really lift heavy weight when we were away on the road. The best you're gonna get is a hotel gym where they might have dumbbells up to 40 pounds. So I'm seeing these really good numbers, and I go back to my campus, and as I said, I'm lifting 4 days a week still like a bodybuilder. I changed it up a little bit. I very much heavily prioritized my legs. So in those 4 days, I hit legs twice, and then I did push and pull the 2 other days, but I hit legs twice. I was really trying to maximize my force production from a lower half perspective and really trying to get as strong and as stable as I possibly could to really be able to use my legs, because for me, I really at that time only thought that power came from the lower half. Later I started to realize that how important the spine was, how important scap load was, and really how important the upper half is as well. But I was solely focused at this time on the lower half and getting it as strong as possible to really just be able to fire down the mound. So now that I'm on campus, I start to get back into my throwing routine, which really consisted of 2 bullpens a week, and then I would long toss 1 to 2 days a week, which I think was so crucial, sort of combating the bad habit of lifting like a bodybuilder and really getting my body really stiff. At this time, I did not prioritize mobility at all. I don't even think I had understood what a 90-90 was yet. I didn't really know anything as far as mobility. All I knew was I was going to lift heavy and I was going to try to throw the ball hard. And that was it. But the thing that really helped me a lot was this long toss of trying to stretch out my arm as far as I could and trying to be free and easy. At that time, I really bought into the Jaeger philosophy of trying to throw the ball as far as I could with just my lower half, but really not trying, and really get that long arc on the baseball and really see how far I could throw it. My goal was to go foul pole to foul pole, just to see how far I could go and really just stay loose throughout that process. So keeping that loose, free, and easy arm action throughout the week over and over and over again really helped translate to the mound for me. And I had already built this base layer of strength, and I think that's what really had the mesh of the two worlds colliding to where I had this really, really good base layer of strength. I was squatting over 400 pounds, I was bench pressing over 225, and then I had this really good sort of loose arm action that came from this philosophy of long tossing and really trying to let the ball go as far as it could without really trying to sort of force it, have any sort of tension to really get the ball to go that distance. I was just letting it free and easy kind of spiral out and go. I didn't really see velocity numbers about until midway through the season where I was seeing 92, 93, where I was like, okay, it's definitely higher than what I threw indoor in that facility. So that's when I started to realize like it's not really a one-to-one transfer. I really wasn't happy with that number of 92, 93, but the thing was I wasn't getting velocity consistently. It was only like hearsay here and there. I didn't really hear what I was actually throwing until my last game of my junior season. And that's when I was throwing 92 to 95 against LSU, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, I was throwing as hard as I wanted to, but I just didn't have any data beforehand to understand what was actually happening. So combining this sort of high workload bodybuilder mentality and this sort of loose delivery that I had, it really was kind of the perfect storm to lead me to having that really good season, to really feeling good every time I went out there, and then having the high-end velocity that I wanted. So I have this really good year, I pitch against LSU, and this is where I realized that bodybuilding was probably one of the worst decisions I ever made and actually led to a pretty catastrophic injury for me. What happened was I had asked so much out of my body with so much workload that I actually compromised the nerve in my elbow and almost lost function of my right arm because the nerve had become so compressed over the workload I had been asking of it. Now I can make another video on that injury of kind of what happened, how it was fixed, and everything that came about once I found out the diagnosis. So you guys let me know in the comments whether you want to hear about that. But the one thing I will say as far as my whole routine for that year was I was on the right track. I think having that base layer of strength and be able to have a good progressive overload and have that force production consistently combined with having a loose delivery is kind of the perfect formula to really feel great on the mound and then have a high sustained velocity. But there were a couple things that I was missing during that time frame, which was obviously the mobility. I was honestly really stiff throughout that time, especially in my hips and in my shoulder. It really started once I really did dive into the bodybuilder style lifting, I really did get super, super tight. And then the other thing that I really didn't realize was that none of those bodybuilder style lifts, where back squat or bench press or deadlifts, I was a huge deadlift guy for some reason, none of those really translated to the motion and the delivery and the force production that happens on the mound. You know, especially when we look at guys like Jacob deGrom or Mizorowski, these guys are thinner, leaner guys who throw over 100 miles an hour. And I didn't understand that velocity doesn't come from being this absolutely jacked, strong guy. That's just not the blueprint to throw hard. But I think the reason that year worked out so well for me was because I had that sort of baseline foundation of having this loose arm action and never in my mind really trying to muscle the baseball or try to ever really throw as hard as I possibly could every pitch. That just wasn't my philosophy. But I had this really good base layer of strength. So when I combined those two, as I said earlier, it was really just the perfect storm. The main takeaways I want you to have from this video is that you need to strength train. There's no doubt about it, but definitely do not strength train like a bodybuilder. I think it's one of the biggest hindrances I ever made in my career. And the other thing is making sure that you stay loose throughout your delivery and being able to train that consistently in your throwing program. That I think was more beneficial than the weight room for me, was I consistently was training how to stay loose throughout my delivery and just let the ball kind of spiral out of my hand and really use my lower half over really trying to muscle the baseball. So if you can really master that principle and then also have a baseline layer of strength, you're gonna have a very successful year like I did. And maybe like me, you might be able to transfer to your dream school and really change the entire trajectory of your career.